You're on the record.
You're on the record. Good afternoon. I'll call the meeting of the Nevada Petrochem Authority Board order. The date 18th, the time is 1:30 p.m. We are in the State Business Center on Sierra Avenue. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the board for the month of May. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Martinez, is Vice Chairman Thompson joined us by telephone?
She is not.
No, Vice Chairman Thompson.
Oh, Vice Chairman Thompson. He is not.
Okay. I received a telephone call from the Vice Chairman indicating he might not be able to attend. I believe Ms. Rodriguez asked for an excused absence. So we do have a quorum of 3 of 5, so we will proceed to conduct business. Has this meeting been noticed in compliance with the Nevada Open Meeting Law with Martin?
Yes.
In the materials are notices of posting. We will proceed then to agenda item 2. Agenda item 2 is time set forth by Nevada statute for public comment. Any member of the public who wishes to address the board may do so on matters within its jurisdiction. We may not take action on any of these items at this meeting and may take under advisement whether to do so in the future. We would ask that any member of the public who wishes to address us try to abbreviate their comments to about 3 minutes. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the board? Is there anybody online who would like to address us?
You have the ability to unmute themselves.
So if you are online and you want to address us in public comment, you may unmute yourself so we can see that you want to speak, and then you may speak by first giving us your name. Hearing none, I will close public comment. Agenda item 3 is an appeal, is an application for appeal on order of permanent revocation of a permit order dated April 8th, 2022. The licensee is Mr. Ali, I believe. Mr. Ali present? Okay. Mr. Ali, if you want to come up to the table here and have a seat.
I'm not speak very well English. Is my interpreter.
That's fine. Bring him up as well.
Thank you.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Sams SABC and last name is Ali ALI.
And your name?
First name Mohammed, last name Imran.
Before us is a record of 130 pages, which include the, I'm sorry, counsel. I'm assuming you are counsel from the Attorney General.
Yes, Chairman. My name is Virginia Tomova. I'm a Deputy Attorney General representing the Nevada Taxicab Authority.
Very well. So before us is a complete record of the case below. And I think preparatory to getting started, I just want to make sure that the appellant, Mr. Ali, and his interpreter understand what is the purpose of this hearing. Okay, and what can and can't happen at this hearing. An appeal has been filed to challenge the order entered by the hearing officer, Mr. Ritter. We are acting like an appellate court. So we do what we do today based on the record created by the hearing officer. So the facts that he recorded, that are recorded in the transcript, as I set forth in his findings of fact, are the factual matters. And then legal matters, which he made conclusions on, we will consider. To win today, for Mr. Ali to prevail today, under our regulation, he has to establish that the hearing officer's decision was either unreasonable, unlawful, erroneous, does not conform to law. Okay, so the standard that we will apply today, I just want everybody to be on the same page, is unreasonable, unlawful, erroneous, or not in conformity with law. Mr. Ali, do you understand that? He might need you to.
बताना पड़ेगा उनको कि वो जो जाती। Yes, he does. Yes.
And counsel, I'm sure you do.
I do, Chairman. Thank
Do
you.
you have any objections to the interpreter being used?
I do have an objection, and the reason being is when this hearing was conducted in front of the Taxi Cab Authority hearing officer on March 21st, 2022, Mr. Sabs represented himself. He did not have problems understanding the English language. This particular interpreter here, we have no certification that he is 100% fluent in the English language, and obviously he's 100% fluent in his native language, which Mr. Sabs speaks. So the state objects to the effect that the interpretation that he's providing him may not be inaccurate, because there is no proof that he has 100% command of the English language, which is required in order for even to be a court-appointed interpreter. And to that extent, it seems like even Chairman, when you were presenting the argument and you were reading the burden that Mr. Sabs need to prove today during the hearing, that unless you instructed the interpreter to translate for Mr. Sabs, it seems like to me that he was understanding of what he was telling him.
Counsel, aren't those rules, though, with regard to interpreters related to evidentiary hearings?
Not necessarily. Anytime when you have an interpreter that is going to be testifying in court and going to be translating, the court needs to establish that there is 100% proficiency of the English language and the native language from which they'll be translating to and from.
But does, not quibbling with you, I just need a record. I don't believe the Administrative Procedure Act requires that. This is an APA hearing, is it not?
I understand that this is an APA hearing. It's just my objection is that he did not have issues representing himself during the hearing. And now he's representing that he needs an interpreter.
Mr. Al.
Yeah, I'm coming the first day, and if he signed me, there's the what is his name? Officer, and I told him I hired the lawyer. He said no, this is the tier code. You no need to hire the lawyer. Then later you no problem. If this one, then you later hire the lawyer. That's why I'm not hired the lawyer before us.
Can I jump in? Yes. Can I request you?
Mr. Chairman,
Can I request you just?
We've got that.
apologies, Mr. Chairman, just for procedurally, I think we should swear in the appellant and his translator if they're going to be speaking and testifying, just one point of procedure.
So, counsel, I'm a bit. I need some clarification on that. This is not an evidentiary hearing. To my understanding, this is an appeal hearing in which the record, the facts are already established. So we're we are to proceed on the basis of the factual record. If there, now we're lawyering back and forth, but I want, if there's substantial evidence in the record, then Mr. Rickards' factual findings are upheld, and then the only question de novo is whether we think there's an error of law. Am I misinterpreting the standard here?
You're not, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with that interpretation, that the factual record has been created below and that you're here to, one, review any questions of law de novo, but to look at any of the factual determinations if they were arbitrary and capricious or unreasonable. So you do have that within your discretion.
And in that case, I don't really need to swear somebody in because I'm not taking testimony.
Of course, technically we don't need to do that because any statements are always under oath in front of the commission, but we do it as general matter of practice. And since there is not an attorney here, and just to reinforce the standards to the participants, just a suggestion, but you are correct that it is not necessary.
You have a feeling on it, Administrator?
Obviously, I would put this as a caution, they probably should be sworn.
Would you please stand and raise your right hand? You solemnly swear that the testimony or any statements you will make before this board will be the truth and nothing but the truth. Right.
Mr. Chairman, question for the Attorney General?
Yes. To our attorney.
No,
To
to
the
the
advocate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the
Yes. Based on your objection, NRS 706.8841 sub 1B2 states that in order to hold a permit to drive a cab, the applicant must be able to read and orally communicate in the English language. At some point in his application packet to the agency, is he required to attest to the agency that he can read and orally communicate in the English language?
Yes, he's required, and he stated that he has taken that test.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
he stated,
He has taken that test in the English language before he was issued the taxi cab from the authority.
so as a preliminary matter, Rebecca, is it your viewpoint, given that you shouldn't be allowed to have an interpreter?
My viewpoint is if it helps him understand, I'm not opposed to it. However, I would sustain the objection in that any position that he is unable to understand will be the English language, and therefore may not be able to proceed in this hearing without the interpreter be sustained. I'm not opposed to him having an interpreter. However, I want to establish that in order to hold a permit, he has attested to the agency and he is able to understand and read the English language.
I concur, and therein and of itself, he may be presenting evidence that sustains the appeal at this very moment.
Correct. I agree.
So I want you to understand what we're discussing in case it's lost on you.
Right.
The fact that he wants an interpreter is a grounds for us to conclude that at some point along the way, he also violated another requirement of Nevada law in that he certified he did not need an interpreter to understand the English language. So the fact that he's using an interpreter today may be evidence that we may use against him.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. But actually, he's not familiar with the court and the hearing terminologies as good as I can do. And secondly, he's here because on the 21st of March, on the first hearing, the hearing date, he could not hire a legal counsel because he was told what he's complaining. He was told by one of the DA officer. Again, I'm saying that, accusing that, I mean, he was told not to hire any legal counsel. So what he is begging now, if he is given a time to hire a legal counsel to get a different date, so you could bring somebody, to represent him like legally. If he wasn't, I mean, had he has a legal counsel on the first hearing, maybe would have been a different case. That's my request.
Council, you want
Yes.
to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. During the hearing, right before the hearing on March 21st, 2022, I met with Mr. Saps as a matter of trying to negotiate and trying to determine of what are the allegations and the violations he had committed. I told him my second, probably or third sentence after I introduced myself and the reason why he was there today, I told him, sir, you have a right to be represented by an attorney. I'm seeing that you're here by yourself today. I said, are you going to be proceeding with this hearing by yourself? And he told me yes. When the hearing officer entered into the courtroom, the hearing officer also advised Mr. Saps that he has a right to be represented by an attorney. And he had a notice of these violations for over a month because the violations were actually committed on February 14th, 2022. The hearing was set for March 21st, 2022. If Mr. Saps wanted to retain a counsel, he had more than a month to do so, but he didn't. Now it seems like it is very convenient for him to come to this hearing after his permit was revoked for his numerous violations of Nevada traffic law and jeopardizing the public safety of residents and visitors in Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada. And he's now claiming that he may need to hire an attorney. We have gone through this round before. We have advised him on 2 separate occasions. He can hire an attorney if he chooses to do so. He had more than a month after the violations were committed to hire, and he didn't. So now he's presented with the same argument.
Object. It's
Thank
the same persisting that, the same guy that he was cited for, the same TA officer told him, I don't know if I could, he could bring up with the record.
Sir,
I'm sorry.
we're not going to take testimony today.
Okay.
Facts are in the transcript. That's what we're going to consider this case on, I've already said. And the transcript also reflects that he was canvassed on whether he wanted to be represented by counsel. And he chose to go forward without counsel. So the members of the board can chime in if they want to, but I would reserve that to the end of the hearing if we want to talk about that as a grant. So, Mr. Ali, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a record as to what you believe the errors are in the decision made by the hearing officer. So what about the decision that the hearing officer rendered in this case is not in conformance with Nevada law, is unreasonable, or is in violation of some process or procedure?
Can I explain?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll explain to him.
Due respect, yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
First to start, what he do with me?
What error did he make in his decision? It's your job to tell us today what error he made in his decision.
I'm coming from the Bali Hotel to the airport.
Yeah. Talking about what error did the hearing officer make? I'm going to ask some questions. Did you run a red light that day?
Not the red light, sir. Here Thursday is too much traffic, and
That's a yes or no. Did you
No.
run a red light?
the blue light.
A blue light?
Yes.
Okay. Were you speeding? Were you going above the speed limit?
It's maybe 5 more speed, yes.
Were you weaving in and out of traffic? Were you changing lanes frequently?
I'm changing line, but I'm use the indicator. I'm not, but not too much line, but it's like normal is the traffic. And like normal, the taxi VR can be drive every day. 3 years I was drive here, never take ticketing like this.
So if I understand your position, everything that the arresting officer, the officer that cited you, everything he saw didn't happen. That's what you're telling me.
Not all, yes, he, lawyer.
He's a liar.
Three, what he said, 3 thing is lawyer. And he's very, like racism, sir. All time he do with me this thing. Not only Thursday, after Thursday, 2 times more Thursday also.
Other questions?
I do.
Yes.
So, Mr. Ali, when you were pulled over by the officer and he explained to you why he was pulling you over,
Yes, sir.
whether you agree with him or not, did you, no, I'm not asking you, you clearly stated you don't agree with him. But whether you did or not, did you provide him with the information identifying you as a taxi driver and a licensed Nevada driver as he asked?
Yes, sir. If he stopped me, he said to me, "Oh, you don't have mask," and I have I'm not.
No,
mask.
I'm not talking about the mask.
Huh.
Whatever he stopped you for,
Yes, sir.
I wasn't there, I don't know. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
When he asked you for your identification and your taxi permit, did you provide it to him?
God swear I'm give this time is the he told me just give me your taxi what is it TA. He told me give me your TA. I have 2 passenger and he told me okay you drop your passenger in the British. Where you going? I'm going British Airline. He told me give me your TA. This time I'm not talking. I'm saying I'll give the TA.
Okay, that was your TA permit.
Yes.
So then after you got to British Airlines and you dropped your passengers off.
Yeah.
And then he asked you for your Nevada driver's license. Did you give it to him at that point?
Yes, sir. I'm going with him, and he told me, "Let's go sit down in your cab." I'm sit down in cab. He said to me, "Give me your license." I'm saying, "What I'm doing like you."
So you're saying you didn't give him the license. You, instead of giving him your license, you asked him to explain to you like he was asking.
Yes.
Okay. Second question. Clearly, at that point, you've established that you had a disagreement with the officer and did not comply with providing him with your license. That's what you're saying. At that point, did you get in your car and drive away without permission from the officer?
No,
to leave the scene?
he told me if you not give me the license, you're not working today, you go back in your company. And this time I'm calling my supervisor and the speaker, I'm putting the supervisor is here. And I told him, the TA said to me, "You're not working today. What can I do now?" He said to me, "Where are you now?" I'm saying, "I'm in the Terminal 3 British Airline. So should I stop my cab here and coming?" He told me, "No problem. You bring your cab in the company. We talk to the TA." And he told me, "You're not working today." So then I'm start my cab just like here, not too much far, 1 minute, and he coming back and he said to me, "Stop," and I'm stopped. He said to me, "Get out in the cave." I'm get out in the cave. He said to me, "Give me your license." I give my license. He take the gun and what is called? Handcuff. He take the handcuff and he told me, "You know what you're doing?" I said, "Sir, you told me you're not working today, so I'm going to the company." He said to me, "Wait, now you never work here again." And he told me 3 times, "You coming from Middle East."
I understand that. Those facts are in your hearing.
Yes.
I'm asking you if you drove away at some point.
Yeah,
You said yes.
he
you
told
did.
me.
You
Yes.
said, okay, so your answer is you drove away because he told you.
Yes, sir. He told me.
And
you're
then
not
you
working
stopped.
today.
And then you stopped again when he stopped you. Said,
Yes.
Did you drive away a second time?
No, sir.
You did, just
No,
one
sir.
time.
Well, that's time. Yes, sir.
No more questions.
I have no questions.
Is there any error of law you would like to identify? Is there any claim that the hearing officer misapplied the law?
Well, yes, according to him, he was.
He's going to answer the question.
I'm
He's the
sorry.
appellant. So if he doesn't understand the question, you can translate to him, but you're not licensed to practice law.
Yes,
Okay, what is the error of law that the hearing officer made?
yeah, he said to me, come in front of my car, car, the TK car. I'm going there and he not check my pocket, you
No,
know.
wait. I'm not talking about the officer. It's your job today to demonstrate to us the hearing officer, Mr. Rickert. You had a hearing in front of Mr. Rickert. What error of law did Mr. Rickert make? Did he misapply the law in some way in rendering his decision?
The other TA,
फर्स्ट 21st of March
uh,
तो उसमें जो hearing officer था उसने कोई गलती की हमारी बात को तो तुम्हारे बात में वो सारा जो ये आज बताया सब उसको वैसे ही बताया
हाँ बताया था, वो नहीं मान रहा था कि देख yeah, I told him everything, the story, but he said to me, I'm not trust you because we not trust you because you are the he not trust me.
Counsel?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have anything else you want to put on the record on your behalf?
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, please. Thank you.
Yes, that's why I'm coming and I'm not understand full what it they say, you know, some words I understand, like what he say I understand quick and sometime I don't understand. I have a request for this because I don't have, I have my kids and my wife and I don't have work no more. And he give me 40 kids, so my Uber lift also is closed. So I want to, I'm apologize for this. I want to give back this because I have my kids and my wife, nobody working.
But, so you're saying a hardship.
Yes,
Hardship. Anything else you'd like to put on the record?
इसके अलावा तो कोई बताना कि पर्सनल मुकाम मालूम हर्षिप नहीं करिए तो कहते तो मैं बाहर करके या कोई भी
no sir, I don't have nothing. Yes, I have very hard time.
Understood. Any question, any additional questions of that appellant?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Counsel?
Thank you, Chairman. Hardship is not an exception to violate Nevada law. You're absolutely correct, Chairman, that pursuant to NAC 706-975, the appellant must set forth in his petition for appeal that the judge's order or decision was unreasonable, unlawful, erroneous, or not in conformity with Nevada law. This particular appellant has failed to establish that. And as a matter of fact, I think the record speaks a million words and explains exactly what happened, starting with investigator Diaz first noticing him not wearing a proper mask, then noticing his reckless driving behavior, veering in and out of traffic without using turning signals, blowing through a red light, going actually around a vehicle that was stopped for the red light for him to beat the red light, not obeying lawfully issued orders by the investigator Diaz to stop his vehicle on numerous occasions. He actually, the investigator had to use sirens and he had to use the public access speaker system at the airport in order to tell him that he needs to stop. He refused to give his driver's license. And it was not until, even in his testimony, which is actually on pages 57 and 59 in the transcript, where he admitted that he failed to give his driver's license when the investigating officer asked him to. And he did not hand his driver's license until the supervisor from Yellow Cab, under which he was operating the taxi cab, told him to. Then he was driving above the speed limit, which is another separate violation. And he admitted, actually in his deposition testimony, he admitted that he did not know, or he was not sure about whether he should be driving the speed limit. And that testimony you can find at here. Pages 43 and 44 of the deposition of the hearing transcript from the hearing on March 3rd, 21st, 2022. I think that here what we're having is a person who is not willing to accept responsibility. As a result of his actions, the appellant was also issued an administrative citation on February 14th, 2022 for violation under NRS 706.8845, subsection 12, which says that he failed to obey all traffic laws in the state of Nevada. And then he also had issued different citations. Under that administrative citation, there's additional, actually 5 violations. The first one is under NRS 484B.653, subsection 1, subsection A, for reckless driving. NRS 484B.500, subsection 1, for failure to stop required upon signal of a peace officer. Violation under NRS 484B.600, subsection 1, for driving at a greater speed than reasonable for the area. Under violation under NRS 484B.300, subsection 1, for failure to obey devices for control of traffic when he blew through a red light. And that is based on the personal observations of Investigator Diaz. And he just told you he went through a blue light, whatever that means. And then he was also committed a violation under NRS 484B.233, subsection 1, for reckless driving, for veering in and out of traffic without using a turning signal. Not only he exposed the public and compromised their safety, but he compromised the safety of his 2 passengers that were in his vehicle. Do we really need to allow someone like that to drive in the streets of Clark County, Nevada, carrying passengers and representing our city? Or do we make the decision and keep this taxi cab permit revoked? The taxi cab authority recommends and asks this commission to uphold the revocation for these very reasons. All of these citations were pending, and I think they're still pending under the Las Vegas Justice Court. And so we're not aware of what the adjudication of these citations were, but hardship is not an excuse for him to violate the law. And him trying to bring his Middle Eastern heritage is also not an exception to violate Nevada law. We have the obligation to protect the public and to protect all visitors and everyone that comes to our great city. And the taxi cab authority would like to keep this appellant's taxi cab permission revoked. Thank you.
Thank you. So you can, if you want to respond in any way you may to the statements to council.
The court, the other court, they dismissed my tickets. 3 up. They dismissed my ticket, and
Saying that the justice court
yes, they
dismissed your case?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any paperwork to establish that
email. Yes,
on your person?
yeah, and my email.
Do you have a document you can present to us?
Attorney sent him an email.
Huh?
Attorney sent him an email. The candy crate. It was dismissed.
So Any other point other than your criminal citations were dismissed? Anything else?
Yeah, that's poor ticket he give me the one time, like. Can he?
Responses to counsel's arguments. First one was the citations were dismissed. Is there anything else? Response to her argument?
Can I answer? Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, the first of all these four charges that she explained, they all belong to one citations. One citations was issued, doesn't matter, goes to the different courts, the justice court, the DA court, here and there, and all of the three has been dismissed, and they have believed in him. And well, if you are believing in a defendant, then I mean, in a hardship and the plaintiff, I mean, if he's not even asking for the mercy and the mercy is not being taken care or listen to anybody, then your discretion to to make a decision.
Anything else? Do you have any questions, counsel?
I don't.
I should have allowed query on counsel's.
I do not have any questions.
Done.
And I have no questions here.
Sorry. Then I'll bring it back for deliberation.
Okay, so I'm actually very inclined to consider Mr. Ali's hardship deal. It took him a while to get there, I think, but in the end, I think that's what he's asking for. And generally, I can support the idea that someone has to make a living. However, in this case, in Mr. Ali's own words, he admitted to the mask violation, admitted to some of the traffic violations, even though apparently Justice Court may have dismissed that ticket. He admitted to failing to cooperate with the lawful order of the TA officer. He escalated the situation of non-cooperation to the point where the officer felt threatened enough to conduct a Terry pat down. In my opinion, Mr. Ali is not the victim. In that situation, his non-cooperation is what resulted in the officer feeling threatened enough to need to determine whether or not he had any weapons. I think I'm not inclined to override the public safety of the Nevada public and its police officers in order to grant the appeal. I agree with the Deputy Attorney General that these are unfortunately consequences of Mr. Ali's actions.
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree with
The last thing that
the Attorney General in this matter. I hear the hardship question, but we're in a period where we have so many people looking to hire people. I don't see the hardship in this. You don't have to be a taxi driver to support your family in Las Vegas. And but you do have to drive safely to be a taxi driver. So I haven't heard anything today that changes, in my mind, what the hearing officer has presented us.
Having read the transcript of the proceedings a couple of times and the decision of the hearing officer, my conclusions are as follows. I'm relying in part on Nellis Motors versus State Department of Motor Vehicles, which set forth preponderance of the evidence as a standard here for the hearing officer and substantial evidence for us. It's my view that there is substantial evidence to support the decision of the hearing officer. That is the evidence which a reasonable mind would believe is adequate to conclude a fact in controversy is established, that in the record, it's the appellant had the ability and adequate time engage counsel if he had so chosen, voluntarily and knowingly proceeded to hearing without counsel. I don't view that as a grounds for sending this back to the hearing officer. The duty of the hearing officer is to weigh credibility of witnesses. It's not our duty to reweigh or even our ability to reweigh credibility of witnesses on an appeal. And the hearing officer very clearly weighed that the credibility of the hearing of the witnesses before him. The appellant had the ability to bring other witnesses, did not. Basically failed to make his case by a preponderance. And the state made their case by a preponderance below. So on the factual matters, I believe that substantial evidence supports the action of the hearing officer. Having reviewed the hearing officer's decision, I see no errors of law. So what I think we get down to is whether the decision is unreasonable. And the question is whether it's unreasonable to sustain the hearing officer's decision because of hardship. I am not unsympathetic to the hardship claim, but I believe that it is our obligation as a board to weigh that hardship against the safety of the traveling public and credibility of the officer, which was found to outweigh that of the appellant. And I think it's an unfortunate situation, but it was within the appellant's ability to drive safely, comply with reasonable orders, and take better care of those passengers which were entrusted to his care. And if the license we give a taxi driver does not mean anything, it means, one, you will obey the laws of the road, and that you will comply with reasonable and lawful orders of law enforcement. So on that basis, I would entertain, if my colleagues agree, a motion to deny.
So moved. I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Your appeal has been denied and the revocation will stand. Thank you. Thanks. You're excused. Council, you're excused to wish. Gentlemen, we have other business to conduct.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item 4, which is industry discussion. This is matters set on the agenda for members of the industry to provide input to the authority, to the board on issues you think we ought to be paying attention to. Is there any member of the industry that would like to? Seeing none. Agenda item 5, staff reports. Mr. Armstrong, take it away.
I've been on the job for a month.
And did you have some fun this morning? Can you tell us about the fun you had
Yes,
this morning?
this morning I had the pleasure with Jim Reeser and Director Reynolds to appear before the legislative committee subcommittee on sunset of particular agencies. It was an extremely enlightening and sobering experience to appear before that august committee, and that I look forward to future appearances before that group in terms of budget and other things that nature. But I did mention to them, we are severely understaffed, and that at this particular point is attempting to staff up the agency so that we can better serve the public as well as serve the industry in terms of our regulatory function as well as our industry function. We also told them that it was like a parting shot in terms of saying that we do need more people and we'll see me again. And I'm asking for more people, and that time is correct. We also, and that's all my report relative to that meeting.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I add one thing, Mr. Administrator?
Yes, you may.
So I just think it's funny that you're a month in and you're already trying to defend your job, which, that's the way it goes in the state. For the public and the industry, I do want to just say that the Sunset Subcommittee is a routine, regular occurrence, and that the agency going in front of the Sunset Subcommittee is required by law every so often, and this happens to be its time. And that is the
To amplify it, it's every 6 years. 6 years ago, the Sunset Committee held a similar hearing.
Right.
Made a recommendation to merge TA and the Taxi Cab Authority, and the legislature rejected it. So it is, I concur with Member Decker. It is the process is just, it happened to you within 30 days of taking the helm. So
Yes. So that was an interesting way to be drawn into the fire of this process. We held on May 9th an unofficial meeting and a workshop dealing with our regulations. It was, I believe it was a 3.5-hour meeting. I believe it was productive in terms of the industry had their ability to tell us what they felt we needed to deal with. But we needed to change. We're in the process of setting up a second meeting once we get a draft together as to what was produced at that meeting to continue discussions. One of the areas in which we're looking into in terms of the discussion that I put off the other day were the accounting regulations that we particularly have at this particular point. Once I have staff in place to review those materials, which I would hope would happen within the month, we will do that and provide that information to the industry. And I expect sometime next month, we will have another meeting with the industry to discuss further how we're going to deal with regulations that we presently have. As we know, some of our regulations are from the 1970s and are outdated, and we need to correct that. We want to do a comprehensive review of all those regulations with due care before presenting those regulations to this board consideration. Some good news, and I believe the chief investigator into his report, is that we've had this month more impounds than we've ever had. One of the things that was somewhat unnerving to me was that we adjudicated on an unauthorized $10,000 fine, and that fine was paid that same day with $100 bills of cash. That type of action scares me just a tad in terms of what do we have to do relative to enforcement in order to make sure that we keep the authorized vehicles on the road. That's something that we're going to have a long discussion with both the industry as well as my staff in terms of with that particular issue, how we tackle that particular movement. Tell them the good news.
Good afternoon, Ruben Atimo, Chief Investigator, Taxi Cab Authority, for the record. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, good afternoon, members of the board.
before you proceed, counsel, you don't have to say it if you don't want to. I'm sure that the people listening to that could be served by some.
Thank you so much.
I'm not excusing our other counsel.
There's nothing more important you could be doing.
Thank you, Chief Investigator. I'm sorry. She was clearly trying to be polite and then
Yes,
didn't know how informal we can be.
understood. So I'll begin where Administrator Armstrong had left off in regard to the report of unlawful passenger transportation. Specifically, we just had the NFL experience here, the draft, and as all of you well know, that event was 3 days. And so during that 3 days, the TA team actually took 10 impounds for that 3-day weekend, along with conducting other duties, specifically uniform patrol as well as undercover patrol for other violations of NRS 706 and NAC 706. But clearly, the highlight of those 3 days was the fact there was the number of unlawful passenger transportation that was occurring at the various locations that we identified. One of note, one of the drivers actually had a top hat on a personal vehicle that said taxi on it and was operating on the city streets. And obviously, none of these people had commercial insurance. They haven't been vetted by law enforcement. They have not been vetted by a DOT medical. Clearly, no insurance for that commercial passenger. So our mission, I think, well, our mission was successful in regard to protecting the riding public those 3 days. With that being said, we are facing another special event that we hold near and dear to us, which is the 2022 Electric Daisy concert on Friday and will proceed on Monday morning this coming week. It is slated 180,000 people plus per day is what is anticipated for this event. So the entire team will be there to enforce those NRSs and NACs with a very specific mission of unlawful passenger transportation. If you recall, on record, we had impounded 14 vehicles last fall. We anticipate that number and possibly even more. So we're currently ramping up and trying to be efficient, redoing how we do things, specifically the report writing so that we can spend more time out in the field conducting our enforcement business. Not so much behind our desk when we have to do these things. So that's my report on the special events. In regard to staffing, under the guidance and direction of Commissioner Armstrong, he's formulated a plan as far as trying to get more officers. We'll be promoting within as well as doing outside recruiting for the agency. And that's all I have, unless you have specific questions.
Questions? Do you currently have a sergeant vacancy?
We currently have 1 sergeant vacancy. That vacancy has been resolved. And in terms of our stats, you'll see them in your book, but basically the stats look pretty good in terms of the total number of citations written in April were 96. The number of violations written, including the impounds, were 125. But the good news is that we only had 3 long-hauling citations, so your zone system has worked very well in terms of cutting down on that problem that we had in the past. We, like you said, 125 violations, 96 total citations. And the different things that we were violating was displaying the TA permit, whether that permit was obstructed or unobstructed, verbal arguments and things of that nature, rotation of the taxi stands in terms of whether the vehicle is in the taxi stand or not in the taxi stand. Soliciting a passenger by voice of action possibly could cause an impound if you're in an unauthorized vehicle. But those are some of the citations that we gave. So our enforcement staff gets kudos for the type of citations and violations that they found, even with their limited numbers. And we're going to try to get more numbers. And I think that's part of my job, because we're getting more numbers so that they have a better presence on the street for 17,000 taxi cabs.
I have a question on that note. Did that plan include any requests or advisements to the Sunset Subcommittee this morning, or are you talking 2023 legislative session type?
I basically had a discussion with them in terms of telling them that I am extremely short-staffed and I need more people, and we've taken a meat cleaver to our budget as of this point, and we'd like to get some of that back.
Gotcha. You're prepping them for the.
I want them not. I do not want them to be surprised when they see me.
Gotcha.
On a number of occasions.
Excellent. Very strategic look. Thank you.
I think the administrator was talking about it. As he could, as best he could.
Administrator, if I may, members of the board, I just want to include one more stat as far as
Sure.
drivers. So in comparison to drivers, April 2021, there was, at that time, there was 2,900 drivers that were. As of April 2022, there is 3,796 drivers at the end of April. And obviously that number continues to rise. And we're already into May. So I imagine we're going to be hitting sometime that 4,000 mark sometime soon.
A follow-up question, just,
Yes, sir.
I'm going off of memory, so I'm asking you to correct my memory if it's wrong. At the height of number of drivers, was it around 6,000? Is that the?
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, that-
It has dropped down to about 3 at this particular point.
No,
Where we are.
I was just trying to.
Yeah.
In analyzing the 3796,
Right.
that would be,
It was 6. It's kind of interesting because we did some slides for the Department of the Industry in terms of the LCD presentation that Director Reynolds is doing. We went back and looked in terms of, because they had in their original slides the 6,000 plus. And we revised the slide down because we looked at the actual numbers and we made sure that it was correct in terms of what he was presenting to the legislative commission.
thank you. Anything else?
No questions here.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question, and it's more of a general question. In the last 10 minutes, we have an incredible amount of impounds, illegal drivers. We've heard that we had an impound with a $10,000 fee that somebody just paid in cash. I'm hearing anecdotally, it's hard to get a cab on weekends. Is our problem we don't have enough cab drivers, or do we not have enough medallions for cabs at the moment?
We have 2 problems.
Okay.
If I can get into that, because of my discussion with the industry, basically, we have 2 problems. One of the problems is being able to get vehicles. Because, the supply chain problem that exists at this particular point, getting appropriate vehicles for different cab companies is a problem. They're having no problems getting fleet vehicles for their fleets, getting more than 1 vehicle at a time. And the wait times are 3 to 6 months if they're trying to get those vehicles, if they can get vehicles at all. We're not just talking vehicles within the contiguous states around here. Some people are trying to go nationwide and they can't. Is an issue. We have a color issue that we are trying to resolve in terms of how the vehicles are signed so that if they can get different colored vehicles, is there any way that we can be a little bit less strict on our signage situation so that those vehicles can be put into service? The other issue is drivers. We don't have enough drivers. Drivers have left the industry. They have gone to other things. They've gone to driving moving trucks. They have gone to driving long haul trucks and other things of that nature. We're having a renaissance of some of the Uber and Lyft drivers coming to want to be part of the taxi cab authority again, but that is still not enough to deal with driver shortage. Basically, the industry has cars to a certain extent, but they don't have drivers to drive those cars. That's one of the reasons why some of the industry has gone to leasing, because the Uber and Lyft model created a situation in which the drivers wanted more flexibility, and that's why we have the lease model. People had the druthers that probably want the employee model if they could work it. Problem is about driver pay. What will be appearing before you sometime in the future is the possibility of a change in the way in which we do rates in order to try to address the driver pay issue, especially addressing the driver pay issue for areas because we're having problems both with seniors as well as with getting the neighborhood serviced because all our medallions have been all switched out at this particular point, Clark County specific, not geo specific. So that's one of the areas, but we have to give drivers incentives as to the reason to serve all the areas that we need served. And part of that is.
I'm so sorry. I always have an Apple charger too, if you don't mind? Okay, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. But in answer to your question, those are the two main issues that we have. We need to get the cars, we need to get the drivers, but we're thinking at this particular point, what will be the best fix in order to make that happen? You, as the board, are going to be deeply involved in that discussion.
Thank you. All of the above plus.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Bala or Mr. Rickard, anything to report to us as council?
Not for me, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing from you? Is that what you said? I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess that was nothing from him.
That's correct, sir.
Nasty email to follow. Okay.
Good afternoon. This is David Rickard, Administrative Attorney for the agency. I just wanted to let you know, Ms. Tamova did tell me that she would prepare the order from the appeal that she wrote earlier on. So she'll be doing that. Other than that, I have nothing to report unless the board has questions. Thank you, sir.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything to discuss with the board on any developments with the litigation as well as the agency?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All I can tell you is that litigation is being full. I know about that litigation. Gotcha.
I guess that's true, Mr. Reed. Involved, it would be.
Any future agenda items that we should be alerted to or that we want to raise? No, the only one I would raise is the one I mentioned to you this morning, and that is, I know you're having conversations with, following on the presentation from Captain.
Right.
On pilot programs and.
Yeah. They said that the pilot program, little the information that I have right now is it's proceeding, but I should have some information for within the next month or two as to the status of that.
Okay, I just would like to keep it on our radar.
Okay.
That brings us to agenda item 6, which is public comment. This is placed on our agenda pursuant to that law for the members of the public to make comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the agency. We may not take action on these items today, and we'd like to ask you to abbreviate your time to the extent possible. Please state your name. We have public comment.
Yes, Desiree Dante on behalf of Lucky and Western Cat. This is actually for Ruben. Do we have maps for EDC? I expected it when I walked in. I was like, oh no. So, all right, that was all I had.
Okay. Any other member of the public wish to address us? Anybody online wants to address us?
No hands raised so far.
Ms. Martinez, were you wanting to address us? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, members of the board. This is a last minute decision, but I just wanted to express, I guess, some sentimental feelings about the happenings today and in general, just having been part of the taxi cab authority. And I'm gonna keep this short. I'll start off with a personal story from like 19 years ago. I was a young mother and I carried my then 3-month-old son. And this incident is specific to having ridden a taxi cab, but it is not local to Las Vegas. It is in my home country, and I'll get to my point later. But I have not thought about this memory for the longest time until recently. And but that my 3-month-old son, we were on our way to get his first check since he was born. And as I was exiting this taxi cab, the door slammed on his foot. So if you could just imagine being a young mother with his son having the door slammed on his foot and not knowing what to do. And within the locality where we were at, there was hardly any regulation. They just drove away, and there I was, kind of just baffled and not knowing what to do. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to just tell somebody, you know, when I calmed myself down, I wanted to tell somebody like, hey, man, like somebody needs to just check their doors or something. Don't let it happen to another mother. Don't let it happen to anyone. Really, it could just be your hand or whatever. Again, I have not had to think about that for the longest time. Today, sitting here having witnessed really what we do for public safety, I'm so very appreciative of what the Taxi Cab Authority does. I'm proud to be a part of this organization, this agency. I hope that we uphold that. And I was also present at the May 9th workshop with industry, and it makes me really hopeful. I know some have told me it's a pipe dream, but if our agency and also as a regulatory body, as well as, you know, a promoter for the industry, we all can come together and make this work. We've got a long ways from where we were in our figures 5 years ago, but I think that now more than ever, we really can come together and make this work, make this, help us all spring back to where we are. It's a very little known fact that in terms of safety, our drivers go through extensive background checks to be able to drive a vehicle. As mentioned before, they go through proficiency tests, English proficiency tests. It's a 20-question test that will attest that their understanding of the English language enough to follow traffic laws and safety. But at the same time, we can also, under a really good leadership, strategize, re-strategize, integrate technology, and our biggest resource, which is human capital. We have to look into that and make this work for us. So with that said, I'm very thankful for our new administrator stepping in and seeming like getting a lot done in so little time. I hope we don't lose the momentum, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we're to adjournment. Item 7. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.